In 2007, the world was forever changed when Apple introduced the iPhone. It was so revolutionary that it sparked a dramatic shift in the definition of a smartphone. During a time where manufacturers were constantly trying to cram more buttons onto their smartphones, Apple decided that the best way forward was to ditch as many buttons as possible and rely on a multi-touch capacitive touchscreen instead. Couple that with an intuitive operating system with big, beautiful icons that wanted you to touch them, and the resulting experience was dramatic. Not only did you have a large display, you could also access full versions of web pages thanks to Safari, something that other smartphones simply could not do. As a result, the iPhone was hailed as a game changer. But while it looked marvelous in the presentation, there were one or two key people who were skeptical about the iPhone's ability to sell.
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine.
Did that matter? Not really, because Apple still sold over 6 million iPhones in its one-year lifespan. Despite that success, the iPhone was far from the perfect device. Besides the obviously high price tag, the iPhone also lacked 3G connectivity, two problems that were quickly rectified with the iPhone 3G. The follow-up iPhone 3GS began Apple's cycle of tick and talk updates. While it looked pretty much identical to the 3G, the 3GS was significantly faster, and it also sported a much more capable 3-megapixel camera that could record video. When the iPhone 4 came along, it became a beacon that cemented Apple's authority in the construction of a premium flagship smartphone. The handset was made from a glorious concoction of metal and glass that was simply unrivaled by any other phone in the world at that point. This beautiful design was also accompanied by a front-facing FaceTime camera that ushered along the age of the selfie. For better or for worse, I think I'll let you decide. The iPhone 4 also marked the start of Apple's beautiful and highly marketed Retina display, a display standard which had such a dense pixel count that individual pixels were indiscernible from each other. Following that was the iPhone 4S, which was another update before the next radical redesign. This iPhone came with the now famous Siri alongside an 8-megapixel camera that was capable of full HD video recording. Fun fact, Apple stuck with an 8-megapixel camera for 5 generations before upgrading it to the 12-megapixel shooter we now have on the iPhone 6s. Thankfully, Apple also kept the iPhone 4's gorgeous overall design language when they moved on to the iPhone 5. The only difference is that they swapped the glass back for an aluminum one and made the handset a little taller. With the follow-up 5S, Apple also slapped on a fingerprint sensor, now known as Touch ID, under the device's physical home button. But that's not all Apple introduced, because they also came up with the first ever quote-unquote budget iPhone with the iPhone 5C. The 5C was met with a mixed response from fans and industry observers alike. Still, the 5C did add some much-needed color to the iPhone lineup. Then we arrive at the iPhone 6, the 9th iteration of Apple's storied smartphone. The iPhone 6 broke all the rules. It was larger, coming in at 4.7 inches, with a Plus variant that sported a massive 5.5-inch screen. Well, massive for an iPhone, that is. The iPhone 6 also came with a new look with more rounded edges, which gave it a more comfortable fit in the hand. The iPhone 6 Plus was also the first iPhone to have optical image stabilization with its camera. These smartphones left a significant mark in Apple's iPhone timeline because it represented Cupertino's first real commitment to making these so-called phablets that we know and love. This trend continued with the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus, but then again we didn't expect that much to change for what was always destined to be a talk upgrade. Still, the S variant gave us 3D touch and new 12-megapixel cameras that were capable of shooting crisp 4K videos. While the move to a larger form factor was generally well received, there was still that group of die-hard fans that wanted the 4-inch iPhone to return. Well, Apple obliged, and in March of this year they released the iPhone SE, a throwback device with updated specs for their old fans. The iPhone has developed well over time, but for a while there, it did seem like Apple was quickly falling behind their Android rivals. Then, at long last, Apple unveiled the iPhone 7, the smartphone that was supposed to put Apple ahead of the curve again. And for a while, it did look quite promising, as the 7 came with several firsts from the tech giant. However, the problem was that a lot of Apple's firsts have already been done by their rivals. Remove the headphone jack? Motorola, Oppo and Alcatel have done that. Water resistance? Both Sony and Samsung have done that, and I even think they did a better job. Dual cameras? Both LG and Huawei have gone down that path too. 32GB of base storage? Android flagships have begun offering 64GB of base storage. After we saw what Apple had to offer with the iPhone 7, it still looked like they were playing catch-up with the lords of the Android world. Apple was supposed to blow our minds with the iPhone 7. They were supposed to rewrite the rules and show us how a smartphone should be made all over again. Instead, the coolest thing about the iPhone 7 was the fact that the home button is now a pressure-sensitive indentation with Apple's excellent taptic feedback. We don't even get a radical redesign. The iPhone 7 still looks roughly the same as the iPhone 6s with the same footprint and thickness. Is this really the best that Apple could manage? I honestly don't know. Perhaps the first reinvention of the smartphone was so brilliant and so revolutionary that even Apple themselves can't do it again.